Mr. Reynolds, thanks for being with us.
All right, thanks for having me.
Some are pointing to Fox and Dick Armey as the people behind all of this.
I would say they are more people who are trying to hop on the bus. The way this thing started was actually a couple of mommy bloggers in Seattle who organized a protest on February 16th. That rally caught on, the idea of the rally caught on, and people quickly organized two more, one in Denver the next day and Mesa, Arizona the next day where Obama was. These got a lot of attention in the blogosphere. They didn't get much media attention. And then a couple of days after that, Rick Santelli delivered his famous rant on CNBC where he called for a Chicago Tea Party in July. People liked the name Tea Party, but they didn't want to wait till July, so people started organizing these protests, and they started popping up right and left and everywhere. And after a lot of Internet chatter, people decided that April 15th was an obvious day to try to collect a whole bunch of them on a single day. And I'm not sure how many there are. There are, in one estimate, I saw 550 of them scheduled around the country, and there's a Google map that shows them, which has the country covered with red dots, but I know there's one here in Knoxville where I am, and it's not on the Google map, so I'm sure it's incomplete.
We have that map. We want to show it to you. Some would say that Howard Dean rewrote the way candidates raise money on the Internet. Barack Obama using it as a social network and a grassroots effort in 2008. So as we move into 2009, what role has the web played in this Tea Party effort? Well,
it's doing what the web always does, which is disintermediating stuff. The Howard Dean and Obama stuff disintermediated a lot of traditional political organizations, bypassing them to go directly to people through meetup.com and Facebook and the like. This is taking it a step further because the Dean and Obama efforts were grassroots self-organization, but in the service of an organization that was already there, a campaign. This is grassroots self-organization that is organizing itself. There is no pre-existing organization that it's getting behind. In fact, I've interviewed a number of Tea Party organizers, and though this is often portrayed as sort of a Republican thing, there's a lot of hostility toward Republican politicians. A number of Republican politicians have asked to speak at these and been turned down by the organizers, particularly if they're people who voted for the stimulus bill. I think actually the risk for the Republicans is that if they're not very careful how they deal with it, this could turn into a third-party effort that would probably hurt them worse than the Democrats.
We are asking our audience how they're spending this tax day, so let me ask you.
I'm actually going to be down at the Knoxville Tea Party. I'll be covering it for pjtv.com.
I want to share with you the question that was asked to White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs on how President Obama will be spending tax day. He will be delivering a speech in the Eisenhower Executive Office building shortly before noon. He'll be discussing the tax code. The story in the Hill newspaper saying that it's inevitable, according to some independent economists, the taxes will have to be raised for those middle-income families. But this is what Robert Gibbs said yesterday when asked the question, and then his response.
Tomorrow is tax day, and a number of conservative groups are organizing these so-called tea parties across the country. They're meant to be grassroots uprising revolts against the administration's policy so far. Is the president aware that these are going on, and do you have any reaction to these?
I don't know if the president's aware of the events. I think the president will use tomorrow as a day to have an event here at the White House to signal the important steps in the economic recovery and reinvestment plan that cut taxes for 95% of working families in America, just as the president proposed doing. Cuts in taxes and tax credits for the creation of clean energy jobs. We'll use tomorrow to highlight individual instances in families that have seen their taxes cut, and I think America can be Americans will see more money in their pockets as a direct result of the Making Work Pay tax cut that the president both campaigned on and passed through Congress.
That was the White House Press Secretary yesterday, and again, as Glenn Reynolds indicated, this is the Google map indicating just where some of the Tea Parties will be taking place, and the accounts range, Glenn Reynolds, from a couple hundred to CBS News reporting this morning as many as 750 locations, and Fox just a couple of minutes ago reporting that they estimate 500 locations around the country.
Yeah, it's a lot, and of course the thing about a self-organized movement is there's no single clearinghouse to go for a count. What's
your reaction to what you heard from the White House press secretary?
Well, I think they're whistling in the dark on this. first of all, the real objection you see at most of the Tea Parties is not to taxes per se, it's to spending and debt. And there's a graph that's become very popular that, I don't know where it came from originally, it was on Greg Mankew's blog, I think, that shows the deficits under Bush, which we all thought were bad enough, and then the CBO estimates of the deficits in future years, which are just colossally 4, 5, 6 times bigger. And I think that's what's got people upset. That you see a lot of signs talking about mortgaging our future. You see a lot of kids with signs that say, I don't want to pay your mortgage, and things like that. And in fact, the best slogan I've seen on a Tea Party sign said, don't spread my wealth, spread my work ethic. I think there's a sense that this represents a major shift in American politics toward a European model, and I think that's what people dislike more than the notion that they're going to pay a little more in taxes, or that maybe, depending on their income, they might get a little bit back. I do think the White House is whistling in the dark, too, if they think they're going to keep that promise about cutting taxes for 95% of taxpayers. That's not going to happen. They're going to wind up having to raise taxes on people making as little as $50,000 to $60,000 a year, according to a number of estimates I've seen. And I think their economic scenario and their deficit scenarios are actually awfully optimistic, so it may well be worse than that.
Final point, I want to go back to something that you indicated earlier. You say that the Republican Party, these are your words, limp and disorganized. What does today mean for the Republicans? What does it mean for organizers and those who use the Internet, as you said earlier, to become to create the ability for people to coordinate and organize themselves?
Well, I think the next stage in this is that a lot of the people who are organizing these protests, and a lot of them are people who've never done anything like this before, are becoming much more interested in politics. And, all politics is local. The short-term impact of this is going to be pressure on members of Congress who note that if you can turn out several thousand people in their district who've never protested before, that may affect the elections. But the longer term is that a lot of these people are getting involved in politics where they never have been before. They're likely to run for office. They're likely to be involved as influential backers or supporters. Some of them are already talking about running for office or picking candidates to back. And I think that's going to be a game changer in some areas in the somewhat ossified state of congressional politics.
Glenn Reynolds, who's joining us on the phone from Knoxville, Tennessee. Among his many sites is Instapundit, and his piece this morning appears on page A15 of the Wall Street Journal. Glenn Reynolds, thanks for spending a couple minutes with us.